Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us, the Tuesday edition. I'm your guide, Derek Hayes. It's a real pleasure to have you with us this evening. Now, per usual, I have a stellar little program prepared for you this evening. A full hour of ghosts, ghouls, rattling chains, and knocking doors. Because each of tonight's calls will all detail haunted houses. And since we like to speed things up here a bit on the Tuesday programs, let's get right into the action. Beginning with Alice, out of the state of Colorado.
Hey Derek, this is Alice from Colorado. I'm calling in another story. This one's probably going to be filed under ghost. Back in 1981, after I graduated from basic military training and technical school, I flew home to Spokane to see my parents. During that visit, my mom finally admitted to me that she knew our house was haunted. My aunt, my mom's sister, used to live with us for a while too, and both of them had seen this woman that they said looked short, kind of plump, I don't know, about 5'2", 5'3", and had longish hair, but they didn't know whether she put it up, and they just saw the part that was hanging down, and that's kind of what my mom looked like. So it was interesting that Dad never believed them when they said that the place was haunted. But when I came home after basic, she told me that they had seen this woman ghost and decided to call her Maria. She said that one day Dad was convinced finally that the house is haunted because he was sitting at the kitchen table and his back was to the living room, but off the living room was a hallway that went down to the bedrooms. And he was sitting there and he wanted Mom, so he saw the corner of his eye that she had walked down the hallway. Well, he saw the corner of his eye, a movement, and then looked and saw her walking down the hallway and into her bedroom at the end of the hall. So he hollered at her, he went, "Hey, Mom!" And my mom actually answered from the other end of the house and said, "Yeah, what do you want?" And he didn't say anything, so she came out and looked at him, and she said he was white as a ghost. And he said, "I just saw you walk down the hallway and into the bedroom." And she said, "Yeah, that was Maria." Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. So thanks again for your podcast. It's the best there is, no matter what anyone says. I read the other day that someone said it wasn't as good as it used to be. Don't listen to them. It's not true. Anyway, thanks. I'll call back with another one. Thanks.
Thank you, Alice. Now, I hope you're correct in saying that it's not true what that reviewer said, because me and my team work incredibly hard to keep everything as fresh as we can here on the program. After nearly 9 years, it's quite a challenge to offer up new material, or at least new ways of presenting old material. But I'd like to think we do a pretty good job. And anyway, I'd love to see this reviewer come give it a try. Not as easy as it seems. Anyway, if I let bad reviews stop me, this thing would have been over a long, long time ago. But there is something you can do to help combat these bad reviews. Leave a good one yourself over at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere else that allows that sort of thing. And once you're done leaving your own positive review, be sure to share your spooky story with us so I can play it here on the program. Simply call our hotline at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or shoot me a voice memo via email to monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. Now, folks, don't let the brevity of this next entry take away from its creepiness. Please welcome Amanda from Washington State to the program.
My name is Amanda. I live in Spokane, Washington, and I lived in an apartment for 8 years. And in that time, I had several experiences. First time, we had a cat, and I was petting her, and as I leaned down to, continue to pet her, I saw the corner of my eye, someone standing there. I couldn't see the head, but I could see that they were wearing a striped shirt and tan pants. Jumped, and when I actually looked, there was nobody there. Another experience, I was vacuuming, and all of a sudden the vacuum turned off, and usually it's because it got unplugged from the wall. I go and check, it's still plugged in. Somehow, switch turned off. That's never happened before or since. Talking to my husband in the kitchen on another experience, and we have cutting boards tucked in between the vacuum and the wall. They just flew out onto the floor. And I was in the bathroom washing my face, and the light switch turned off. Another creepy experience was I was getting ready to go to bed, and I just happened to look up, and at the end of my bed was like a shadow figure staring at me. So I hurried up, turned my light on, and it was gone. And there'd be times where if I was in the bathroom, my dog would sit in the hallway just to kind of chill, and there were several times where I saw him watch something walk by. But we no longer live there, thankfully. Just some of the experiences we experienced in the 8 years living there. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Now, one common thing you'll notice tonight is that most of these callers have multiple experiences, not just one or two. And it's that kind of consistency that constitutes a haunting, rather than some one-off encounter. But when someone reports strange things in a home for long periods of time, it could also suggest some sort of explainable cause. Those that claim to live in haunted homes often report hearing or seeing unexplainable things, suffering bouts of confusion, dizziness, weakness, and nausea. And perhaps it's more than a coincidence that these are also some of the most common symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning. Now, carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas that can cause illness and even death if inhaled. Where does it come from, you might ask? Well, anything that burns coal, gasoline, kerosene, oil, propane, or wood can emit carbon monoxide. Automobile engines, indoor and portable heating systems, stoves, and water heaters that use natural gas. And symptoms of CO poisoning can include breathing problems, chest pain, drowsiness, fainting, irritability, headaches, and even hallucinations. And your pets can be affected as well. Now, you can go to Target or Walmart or Amazon and pick up a CO detector for about $12 to $15. And not only is it a good way to debunk a potential haunting, it could very well save your life. So if you don't have a carbon monoxide detector in your house, forget the ghosts. Go straight to Amazon, pick one up, and install it today. You might thank me someday. Now, folks, I have so much more haunting to share. But first, we must take a moment to hear from tonight's sponsors.
High-quality life. Easy to offer outdoor dining with movies.
The Termite Lady is offering free termite
ramen who's pushed to keep it in place.
Free money-back guarantee.
Now, as promised, I have all kinds of haunted house stories to share tonight, including light-hearted ones, like Madison's, out of the state of New Hampshire.
Hi, Derek. My name is Madison. I'm calling from the Seacoast area of New Hampshire, and I have a fun little lighthearted story that I thought you might like for the podcast. So I grew up in a variety of haunted houses, including one that Ed and Lorraine Warren spent quite a bit of time visiting, which I will call back the cool stories. Probably at a later time for that maybe requires a little bit more time than this story does, but I thought you'd appreciate this and just know that I'm really familiar with what it's like to be in a haunted house, so I felt comfortable being pretty sure about what I saw. So my house right now, the original owner, Frank, did die in the house, and I'm pretty sure he's still hanging out with us. In New Hampshire, they have to disclose it if someone dies in your home, and that was one of the first things they said to us to make sure I wasn't freaked out by it. I told them I was perfectly fine, but my husband was a little uncomfortable. We've been in the house for about 5 years. We've had a few incidents where my husband and I were in the basement, and my husband would love for there to be any explanation other than a ghost. And in the basement, we heard someone walking around upstairs, and my husband turns and looks at me with the biggest eyes he can have and goes, "The dog is getting really fat." Which my response was, and he learned to walk on 2 legs, apparently. But with that, now after 5, almost 6 years in the house, we have a 1-year-old who will routinely turn away from us to roll his ball at someone who's not there, play peekaboo with someone who's not there. Sometimes he will laugh and giggle and wave bye-bye at someone behind us when there's no one there, and it creeps my husband out to no end, but I generally just say, "Oh, that's Frank, he's just being a nice old grandpa," because as far as what we've learned about him, that's what he was. And I have a little story that I thought you would appreciate from the debunking standpoint, is I slept in the baby's nursery about a week or 2 ago and woke up in the middle of the night without my contacts in and couldn't see anything but this big glowing orb in the hallway. And Frank had never done that before, and that freaked me out, and I couldn't find my glasses, and losing my mind, and I stood up and said, "Frank, you got to get out of here. That's not nice at all," because normally that's all it takes if he's making too much noise. And then when I did find my glasses, realized that my husband had installed child safety doorknobs on the hallway bathroom, which glow at night. So did my own little debunking on that one, but I thought you would find it nice, and I find it sweet that my little boy interacts with our friendly house ghost, and I can't imagine living in a house that doesn't have a friendly house ghost after all these years. Thank you so much. I love your podcast. It makes me so happy to know that there's other people out there, and the Facebook page has been so wonderful and welcoming and engaging, and I just love it. I love hearing other people from New Hampshire. I love hearing other people from New England share their stories. Please keep doing the good work you're doing, and you have a wonderful day. Blessed be.
Thank you, Madison. Now there's another common trope to these haunted house stories. Naming the entity. Like good old Frank here. You know, my grandma always claimed that her place was haunted. Anytime I'd ever ask her about it, she'd always say the same thing. "Oh, that's just Charlie. He came with that side of the house." Or something to that effect. And that's how you know you have a good ghost. When you can associate a name with the entity. But when that entity hides and does its best to stay undetected, well, I suppose that's when you should start to worry. Like our friend Ari here, from Parts Unknown.
Hello again, this is Ari. I wanted to call back and tell you about a house that I lived in with my family when I was about 18. So we moved out to this road called Roark Road in small town Kentucky. It was off this road called Gold City Road, and every graduating class had a story about a friend they had in middle school or high school who had died on that road. It's very windy. It's a country road. Not much around once you drive for a few minutes, and of course, if you're intoxicated in any way, which most of them were, it's just not safe to drive that road. There's a big hill right before the house that we lived in, actually, and there were rumors of, a man and his family driving down that road, and, the kids like the tummy feeling that you get when you go over a big hill, and he went over the hill too fast, and I have actually done that. Your car starts to fly a little bit, actually, but it's said that he went down the hill and crashed the car. I heard that there were bodies in the trees above, and that's like right where you would turn to get to our house that we lived in. And that house was really scary. One story I wanted to tell was, so my sister at the time, who is now transitioned, but for the sake of my experience, I'll refer to them as they were then. So whatever was there really liked to mess with them. So just one example is one day, me and my then sister lived downstairs, and it was like a little apartment. It was really cool, and there was a bathroom, so we could take showers and then just go straight into our room. And our room was huge, but the door didn't latch, like at all. There was a doorknob, there was no latch. So one day, my sibling, she gets out of the shower and tries to open the bedroom door, and it opened out, so you would be pulling it towards you. And it was usually ajar because, like I said, it didn't latch, so we were always really careful. Of course, we were downstairs in the basement, so usually people didn't really walk in, but, the door was closed when they went to open it, and I guess I'm kind of a prankster, so they assumed it was me, and so they're trying to pull the door open, and they're like, oh, Mika is what they called me, and they're like, stop, let me in, like, come on, like, not cool. But they said they were pulling with all of their might, and they pulled and pulled and pulled, and by the way, they're much stronger than they always have been, and they got it open like just an inch, and then it slammed shut so hard that it pulled them with it. So at this point, they're just like, okay, fine, thinking it's me. They're like, fine, I'm going to go sit in this rocking chair that was in our little living area, and I'm going to sing Yellow Submarine so loud until you just let me in. So their plan was to annoy me into just, giving up. But, of course, I was not there. I was waiting for them actually to get out of the shower so that I could shower next, and I was upstairs in the living room just chatting with my mom, and my younger sibling comes up the steps, which those steps I can talk about for another 5 minutes, but comes up the steps and is just laughing, like crying, laughing, saying, oh my, you're so good, you're good, you really got me. So looking back, I know that they were in denial, but my mom and I are like, what are you talking about? And we are a prankster family, so at first they were like, nah, don't even try that. But we were so genuine, like straight face, like, what are you talking about? And they were like, you really have been up here the whole time. And my mom and I are like, yes, like, what is going on? So they tell us this story, and it was creepy, but not surprising. But anyway, I have a lot of stories about this home. I saw my little brother when he wasn't there once at the top of the steps while I was washing the dishes at night while everyone was in bed. I got out of the shower once downstairs in our little basement apartment that my sibling and I shared downstairs. The rest of the family was upstairs. And the radios would never work down there. So I would turn it on sometimes and, there was static. So one day I just started saying, hello to the static, wondering if I could get anything. And I did. There was a hello. It replied back, hello. And I got creeped out and turned the radio off and never did that again. And then there was always this feeling as if someone was walking into the room or someone was poking their head into the room. And the really weird thing about that is whenever I had that feeling, I would turn around and sometimes my mom would be there, poking her head into the room, to ask what I was doing. So you know how you can feel when someone comes into a room? That's what it was. And I was constantly turning around because it felt like someone was just walking into that door over and over and over again. And our family was going through a really, really crazy time. Everything was kind of off balance and it was not good. It was a lot of bad emotions. But the downstairs basement was just so heavy and dark. Actually, the very first night that I did not stay in that same room with my then sister, I went to a friend's house, and she suffered something strange, and actually, never really went into full detail, because by the morning, after going through this night of horror, she actually ended the night into the morning by falling, and the floors were concrete, so they fell and actually had a concussion. So at first they didn't really remember some of it, but I know some of the memories came back and they just didn't want to talk about it. But it was very intense and very strange, and I will never forget this house. And even the more frustrating thing is that I contacted the guy that was about my age that grew up in this house. I asked him about it, and he never had an experience. So I have been told that it follows me around, it follows my family around. But yeah, thanks. I just really wanted to get this off of my chest, and I really appreciate everything. So thanks, and have a good night.
An entity holding the door shut. That's not something Frank would do, I guarantee you. That's behavior reserved for one of those terrifying, nameless entities. Now, the laundry list of unwanted activity in the story is long, so it's obvious something is going on. Whatever it is or was, I have no clue. But we do thank you, Ari, for confiding in us. Now, folks, do me a favor and don't forget to visit our merchandise shop to pick up a piece of Monsters Among Us gear today. That's monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the shop tab. Now, this next entry is a second-hand experience from the Pacific Northwest. Robin, welcome to tonight's program.
Hey, Derek and listeners and crew. This is Robin, living in Oregon, originally from Texas. I've been listening for a few years, Patreon subscriber, love the show. I come from one of those families where everyone's kind of had some experience or another, and this is actually my sister's story. So at the time, she was living in Lyndon, Washington, which is up near the Canadian border, and they were renting a house while they were having a house built. They had a couple of smaller kids. I want to say they were one was 5 and one was 12 or something like that, and they were living in this house, and strange things were happening. And at the time, I remember her relaying this information to me. Now, this has been probably 15 years ago now. But she came to visit last summer, and we started comparing notes. And it was kind of interesting what I remembered and what she remembered, and we kind of put it all together. And my niece was visiting as well, filling in some other blanks. But they lived in this little house. I remember at the time, my sister telling me these weird things. And one was that they were sitting in the living room, and when you buy a bag of cheese and you tear off the piece above where the Ziploc part is, it's kind of like a heavier piece of plastic kind of, and they were sitting in their living room, and it came sort of floating into the room and dropped on the coffee table. There was also an incident where my brother-in-law left his Swiss Army knife on the coffee table. They went out, did their things, came back, and the plastic part of the knife had melted just in the middle of the coffee table. There was no real rhyme or reason to that. So I had never visited them in this house, but they were explaining to me that the orientation of the house was the couch was facing the TV, and behind the couch was the hallway where the bedrooms kind of lined the sides. And they would be watching TV, and blocks from the little kid's room would be getting thrown across the hall. There was an incident where And this was one that I just discovered when my sister was here visiting. I didn't remember this one, but my sister had left the kids in the house and had gone to check the mail. And when she came back, the door was locked. And she wasn't able to get back into the house. There was a weird situation where she left the kids watching TV and she went to take a shower. And when she came back out, all the faceplate covers to the electrical outlets had been taken off, like unscrewed from the wall and set on the floor. And the kids were like oblivious. I mean, God love these kids. They weren't the most capable kids, so they couldn't have pulled off like a prank of that magnitude. So the interesting piece that I didn't know at the time that was revealed to me on their last visit was that apparently on that property, there had been a renter in a trailer that landlords weren't apparently too fond of. His trailer had caught on fire and he perished in the fire. So after I heard that piece and I heard all the weird, the melted knife and the outlet covers and things, it just sort of added up to me. When my sister was visiting recently, we went and kind of looked the place up, and it was for sale and had been like completely redone. It would be interesting to find out what the folks are experiencing that live there now. But anyway, thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you for your support over on Patreon. Another laundry list of activity. Now, you might be curious about the numbers on haunted houses, especially after hearing all that we have to offer here tonight. And, well, thanks to Delaney, I have some information to share with you. In a 2018 Realtor.com survey of 1,067 people here in the U.S., a whopping 2 out of every 5 said they lived in a house that was possibly haunted, if not definitely. And surprisingly, a third of respondents said they would risk the possibility of buying a haunted home if A, it meant a lower price, and B, it meant it had a larger kitchen, and or C, it meant living in a better neighborhood. So what do you think? Would you knowingly live in a haunted home just because it had a 6-burner stove and a walk-in pantry? Now, I cook an awful lot, so I would probably say yes to this one. But I suppose that all depends on the spirit. Now, living in a haunted house is one thing, but what if you're visiting someplace and you begin to notice strange activity? Well, that seems to be what happened to our next caller, Eric. And here's his story from Parts Unknown.
Hey, Derek. My name's Eric. I started thinking about previous experiences and remembered one. It was with probably 6 people. And the girl's house that we went to, and this is, I want to say, 10, 12 years ago, and it was late in the evening. We got to her house, you go into the garage, turn into the house, and you're looking straight into the kitchen, which is surrounded by cupboards. You turn right, walk through the family room, where there's a couch and TV, keep going that direction, and then you go down I think it was 3 steps down into a second family room or living room. And she'd always talked about the house being haunted and that they had to call the cops once because the closet doors kept slamming without anybody even touching them. And crucifixes through the house would be turned upside down. And we always kind of just shrugged it off yeah, okay, whatever. There's, like I said, probably 6 of us there. And we're down in the 3-step down family room, and we're watching some movie. And at the back of the room is a piano, and the DVD started to skip. And at the exact time the DVD started to skip, the piano played 2 or 3 notes. So we were all kind of but she didn't have any cats or dogs or anything like that, so it wasn't an animal. But we kind of shrugged it off. And then a little bit later, she was like, well, I'm going to run up into the kitchen and get us all some beverages. So she goes running up, and she wouldn't have had enough time to do this because it was as soon as she got up there, she was like, you guys need to come see this. So we went and we walked through the family room, which also then had a dining room behind it with a table and chairs. everything was fine. We go into the kitchen, and every single cupboard is open, and they're opened at almost the exact same angle on every single cupboard, and there was probably, 15 to 20 cupboards in there between top and bottom. There's no way that she would have had nearly enough time to do that. So then we go walking back, and we close all the cupboards, go walking back to the family room. All the dining room chairs that were at the table behind the couch were stacked in a pyramid on the couch. It was one of the weirdest experiences I've had, and I always forget about it, but there were 6 people there, and we all saw the same thing. And again, she wouldn't have had enough time to do it, to like trick us, because it was pretty instantaneous. And that was in Dearborn, Michigan. Again, I couldn't tell you what year it was. It was probably 12 years ago. So I just thought I would share that story. I always kind of forget about it, because I guess it didn't really scare me all that much, because I didn't really see anything other than things moved after the fact. But it's an interesting story, and I kind of started to believe her a little more. But yeah, so that's my story. Just wanted to share that. And I appreciate listening to your show and everything you do. So thank you very much. All right, bye.
Thank you, Eric. You know, this sounds like something straight out of the film Poltergeist, and maybe The Sixth Sense as well. But according to Eric, this was no movie. This was real life. A home that a family inhabited. Now, I'm not a scientist or anything, but I would love an opportunity to study an extremely active location like this. Or maybe just spend some time there, just to have an experience of my own. Either way, it was a great story, Eric, and I hope things got better for that family, because it sounds like things were pretty out of control at the time. Now, folks, before we move on, don't forget to check out 2 of my side projects. Monsters Among Us Jr., a place where our youngest listeners can share their stories and hear tales from other youngsters. Just search for Monsters Among Us Jr. wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget about our feature film, Shadows in the Desert, High Strangeness in the Borrego Triangle, a little documentary funded by our amazing followers that explores a little-known area of high strangeness in the deserts of Southern California. Ghosts, ghost lights, UFOs, UFO cover-ups, and even Bigfoot. Just visit BorregoTriangle.com to learn more, or search for Shadows in the Desert wherever you get your films. Now then, this next entry takes us down to Texas. Please welcome Amber to the airwaves.
Hi, my name is Amber, and I live in East Texas. And I have had a bunch of things happen to me in my life that were, I guess, considered paranormal. And I think it's because I am kind of like an empath, like I can pick up on things, you know, like walk into a house that maybe has had like ghosts or something, like I can feel it. It's weird, like I can just feel it like in my chest, like I feel like I can't breathe, you know. But I've had a lot of things happen, but there was one thing that happened a long time ago. I was probably about 17, which I'm 32 now, so it was a while ago. But I was 17 and I was working at Dairy Queen, and I had a friend who had started working out there, and we met there. I didn't know her before that. She was not from here. She was from Kansas, and she came there and she started working there, and we just became fast friends. She had 4 kids. She was a little bit older than me. She had 4 kids, and they lived probably about 3 to 4 miles up the road from Dairy Queen. And one night, she wanted me to come hang out, you know, at their house after work. So I was like, okay. So I get off work, and I went home, and I changed my clothes and everything, so I didn't want to smell like a big greasy hamburger. And I drove to her house, and whenever you first walked in, it was like the front door was basically, it just opened up into like a long hallway. And the layout of their house was kind of strange. So you open up the front door and you walk into a giant hallway that was like very long, and then on each side of the hallway there was like one door that was a kitchen, and then one door that was one of the kids' bedrooms, and then another door that was a kid's bedroom, and then another door that was a bathroom, and then there was a door at the very end, and then that opened up into the living room, and then you go through the living room, and then there was another door, and that was the master bedroom. So it wasn't like a huge house. It was just built very simple, but kind of an odd layout. And it was like whenever I first went in, like I walked through like this hallway and whatever, and I get to like where you can walk into the living room, and everybody's there, and like we greeted each other, and we're all hanging out and laughing and talking and stuff. And I needed to go to the bathroom, so I get up and I go and I do my business and whatever, and I come back and I'm, you know, talking to my friend, and I'm just like, you know, this is going to sound kind of weird. I was like, but I said, is your house like maybe haunted or anything? I said, because I'm just having like a lot of weird feelings. Like I felt kind of shaky. I felt kind of dizzy, and I couldn't really breathe. Like I couldn't catch like a good breath. Like I couldn't like breathe in and actually feel that it was doing anything, you know? And I tried to explain to her, I was like, you know, I kind of can tell things like that, and that's why I'm asking if, you know, if anything weird has happened like since you've been living here, you know? And she's like, oh my God, you know, I can't believe that you said that. That's insane. Like we have stuff happen here all the time. That's so crazy that you knew that, because she hadn't ever, you know, told me anything about it, and she didn't want to tell me because she didn't want me to be scared to come over there. So she starts telling me like all these crazy stories of like things that have happened since they've been living there. And it's just like, you know, crazy things like the kitchen window for some reason would open by itself all the time. Lights and stuff would turn on and off. Things would go missing, things like that. And of course, like I said, she was from Kansas, and she had brought, you know, only a couple of things from where she was from, because they didn't have like a whole lot of ways to like everything that she had ever had, I guess. So she could only bring, you know, like a certain amount of things that mattered. And one of the things that she brought was this old grandfather clock thing, like a cuckoo clock, I guess, and it belonged to her great-great-grandfather. And she said that she brought that with her because it meant something to her, and it was passed down to her from, you know, like other family members and stuff. And she's telling me the story behind it, and how it doesn't work anymore, and, you know, how she wished it would work, and, you know, because it would be really neat because this little thing would like pop out and it would make like the noise and whatnot. So her and I are sitting in the living room, and we're by ourselves at this point. It's broad daylight outside. Like, it's not creepy or anything. Like, we're just hanging out. All the kids are at school. Her husband's at work. We both have the day off. We're just chilling, okay? We're sitting there, and we're talking about this cuckoo clock. And literally, probably, I would say maybe 3 to 5 minutes later, like, we're sitting there, and I kid you not, this cuckoo clock starts making the noise, the cuckoo noise. Like, making, like, a little chime noise and all this stuff. And she just, like, her mouth opens, and she just looks over at me, and she's like, oh, my God. And she said, that thing hasn't gone off ever in my life. She said, it's always been either at my mom's house or somewhere where I've been my whole entire life, and not one time have I ever heard it until today. It was just, you know, weird stuff like that. Like I said previously, her things would go missing. Her kids would take pictures and stuff like that on like little Polaroid cameras. And this was, you know, a while ago. So they had like the little Polaroid camera things, and they would take pictures. And in the pictures, there would be orbs and like streaks of light, things like that. But that's just like one story that I can really like discuss without taking up too much time. I've had many other things happen just in my presence, like that I'll go somewhere and we'll start talking about something, and then something will happen. And I've seen things, I've heard things, I've felt things. It's just crazy stuff. But I would like to be able to tell you guys more about other things that I've had happen. Just really crazy, unexplainable, like holy shit things. So anyway, I really love the show, and I listen to it anytime I have a time. So have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Now, Amber mentioned another common thread between a lot of these haunted house stories. Those with quote-unquote abilities tend to have these experiences more often than those that don't. And it's typically reported, just like Amber said. People that claim to have abilities, like Amber, can feel instantly that something was off. So I suggest making friends with one of these intuitive people, and bring them along next time you're shopping for your next home or your new apartment. A canary in the coal mine, if you will. Now, the only other way I can think to prevent moving into a haunted house accidentally is to purchase your home in either New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, or Minnesota, because they're the only states that address the subject in their real estate disclosure laws, making it illegal to sell a haunted house without disclosure. Now, I got all this information from an article published by Zillow. A link can be found in the show notes if you'd like to dig deeper. But it's a pretty wild call, Amber. Not only because you essentially outed the activity without any prior knowledge, but because whatever was in that house seemed to want to impress you an awful lot, assuming that it was the entity or entities that magically fixed the cuckoo clock. Well, either way, great story, and we thank you again for calling in. Now, if you don't mind, let's duck off to our next ad break. But then, when I return, I have many more haunted house tales to share with you tonight. But first, a word from our sponsors. Now, this next entry takes us all the way up to Wisconsin. Wes, welcome to the show.
Hi, Derek. My name is Wes. I have a little story for you from Baraboo, Wisconsin. When my kids were 7 and 4, they're now 11 and 9, we lived in this little duplex. And it was upstairs, downstairs duplex, and we lived upstairs. And we moved in. It was a month-to-month rental agreement, so we could, give the guy 2 weeks' notice and move out. We were just moving in and getting settled in, and the kids had one bedroom, and me and my wife had the other bedroom. And some strange things started happening pretty soon after we moved in, maybe 2 weeks. We would find things out of place and maybe pictures knocked over, just weird things like that. And eventually it got so bad to the point to where the kids were scared all the time. They would not sleep in their bedroom. We actually had to take their mattress from their bed and throw it on our bedroom floor because we just couldn't get them to go in their bedroom. Their bedroom was always cold. We couldn't get their bedroom warm. It was just the weirdest thing. And told a friend of mine about it, and he says, "Oh, it sounds like you have some kind of unwanted entity in your house." And he gave me a Bible, and he highlighted some verses to read, which we did. We all sat in the bedroom one night, and we just read, and things didn't get any better. They actually got a lot worse. The attic, I guess you could say, of the house was in the bedroom, and there was a thin little board covering, kind of like the ceiling of a hospital, that thin cardboard with the holes in it, covering the attic. And pretty soon that board in the middle of the night or whenever it happened would come off of there every night. We'd always put it back. Eventually I nailed up a piece of wood. We'd wake up the next morning and the nailed piece of wood would be off. So I told my friend about it once again, and he got a hold of his church, and he actually had a priest come over and anoint the room with oil. And this priest came over, and he did his thing, and he was spreading oil throughout the house, and things still got worse after that. The children began to not respond like they would normally. And my friend, when he found out after I told him, he came over and he kind of did some Bible reading from some verses that weren't highlighted that he gave me the Bible of. And he told me that this room, there's something wrong with this room, that it was really uneasy. And he told me that maybe we should consider moving. And I thought, I'm not a huge believer in this stuff, and just probably new house jitters. I don't know what you would call it. But the kids, one night, we were reading from the Bible, and my 4-year-old son looks at me and he starts crying and shaking. And I looked at him and I said, "What's wrong?" And He said, "The dark man is here, Dad, the dark man." And I said, "The dark man? Who's the dark man?" He said, "He's standing right behind you." And I turned around to look, and there was nothing there. And I looked over, and my son, who is 4 years old, was pouring tears out of his face, shaking, and just started screaming. And he said, "Don't look at him, don't look at him." And in the weirdest voice, he looked at me and he said, "You're going to die 2 Saturdays from today if we don't get out of here." A 4-year-old said this to me, which I couldn't believe. And that was when we just kind of gave the guy a notice and told him that we were leaving, and we were only there for about a month and a half before we got chased out of this house. And I just wanted to say thank you very much, Derek. And I've only been listening to your podcast for a couple weeks now, but I mean, it feels like a nice place that I could call and kind of tell somebody the story where people aren't going to think I'm crazy. And congratulations with the success of your podcast, and thank you very much for everything. Take it easy.
Thank you, Wes. Now we're not going to think you're crazy for reporting this. We might think you crazy if you didn't leave the apartment immediately, but not for reporting this. Especially after the dire warning from the 4-year-old. I think you did the right thing, Wes. You left before things could get out of control. And while that might not make for the best story, it's certainly the right choice for you and your family, Wes. So thank you again for calling in. Now, folks, I have to squeak in one more ad break before we wrap this whole thing up tonight. But I'm going to share one more call with you before we do so. So for this brief but chilling entry, we visit the state of Utah, where Braden is waiting with his tale.
Hey, Derek. My name is Braden. I'm from Morgan, Utah. I just want to say that I really like your show. It's fantastic, and it really helps me pass my time. I just have a couple little things. They're not super long, but they're kind of cool, I think. The first thing I thought of, it was maybe a year ago. Me and my brother were talking down in his room, which is in the basement, and he has a bathroom connecting to his room, and it was open. I was in there talking to him. None of us were near the bathroom. My other brother was in his room asleep. My mom was at work, and my dad was upstairs in his room asleep, in my mom and dad's room. And me and my brother were just talking, and we heard the lock click. And I was like, what the heck? So I go check it, and sure enough, the door was locked. And I was like, what the heck? This is cool. I think I know who did it. I'm pretty sure my uncle. He passed away maybe just a little bit before this experience happened. And he's a pretty big jokester, so I would think that that was him locking the door and trying to freak us out, because that's something he would do. The next thing, I don't really remember the date it was a while ago, like a couple years ago. My parents were both gone, and it was me and both my brothers upstairs on the couch, and we were just hanging out, having a grand old time playing video games. When from downstairs, we heard my dad yell, "Hey, come down here." And we were like, "Isn't Dad gone?" And they were both like, "Yeah, he's not here." So we all went downstairs, and there was nobody there. So, and our house isn't haunted. Otherwise, other stuff would happen. I know that for sure. But, yeah, I just wanted to call in and share my little stories with you. I really appreciate the podcast. It's fantastic. And I'm a big fan. All right, well, you have a good rest of your day. And if I have any more experiences, I'll be sure to call. Thanks.
Thank you, Braden. That's a dangerous game you're playing there, my friend. Sure, the entity in your house just might be your uncle. But what if it's not? What if it's something else, and your assumption is not only wrong, but also leading you into a false sense of security? Who knows what that something might be capable of? But you said it yourself, Braden. You don't think your place is haunted. It just had some weird activity a few times. Regardless of whether it's haunted or not, we appreciate your phone call. And I think you should just keep your guard up, just in case.
Big. And here's another bonus.
Bring in your daily life to support your mental wellness. Drop the Fed's fund rate by 50%.
And here we are, fellow scare addicts. We've reached the final entry of this haunted house themed episode. And this last one takes place down in Florida, where everything is already a little bit weird. Please welcome Kyle to tonight's program.
Okay, so my name is Kyle, and I got a fun little story to tell. I'm personally a pretty big skeptic and don't believe in anything, but a lot of this is a little too much to give me any actual real answers. So maybe someone out there can figure out something of what's happening. I can't even figure out if everything that happens is linked or if it's just separate events. Anyways, I'm from a small town in Florida. It's called Lake Como. It's so small you can't even get a mailbox. You have to go to the post office and get a P.O. box. They don't deliver mail or anything. There's only like 500 people that live there. My mother was given this brand new trailer by her dad at the very end of this dirt road. We ended up having to leave and move in there from a couple towns over because some weird shit happened and she snitched on one of her friends and blah blah blah. Long story that doesn't matter. Anyways, it's a medium-sized, single-wide, brand new. The road itself was paved with clay just for the house. So there was nothing out there before this. It was just trees and grass. So in about 2000 is when we moved there. I was 10. It was me, my sister, she was 16, and then my mother. So my mother worked most of the time, single mother. And then when we first got there, it was real weird. We would all share a bed because we were broke. And then there was constant, random poundings on the walls and stuff. And then the power would go on and out. And this is a brand new trailer, so it shouldn't have power issues. And then, that slowed down. We never noticed much. And then, the school year started, and we started going back to school. And then during those first few months, me and my sister would constantly come home to the windows, the doors, all the cabinets in the kitchen, the fridge door, everything open. And then the TV, the old big solid oak TV would be blaring on static, and the volumes turned up, the radios would be turned up. And this happened a few times over a few months, and it slowed down and stopped. And then so after a while, my mom got remarried, everything calmed down. We moved into a different house, but my mom still kept the house. My mom was a little crazy and she'd fight with her husbands all the time, and so she used it as a little vacation. So she'd start a fight with her husband and then run back and stay in the house for a week when everything cooled off and then go back and apologize. Fun mom. So when I was about 16, we're spending our week there, and I'm in my room. My sister's gone and it's just my mom. And then my mom would always sleep on the couch so she could watch TV every night. And then so one night, it's probably midnight, maybe a little later, my mom screams for me. So I get up and I go out there and I'm like, what's going on? And she says a little boy just ran all the way from the other end of the house through the kitchen, past the TV in the living room, and into the wall, which is my bedroom. She was serious. She was up, wide awake. She called her mom and was, telling her mom about it and stuff. I assume she took a couple too many sleeping pills or something, and maybe that's what caused it, Never actually believed it. So then years go by. I graduate high school. She moves. She gets a husband, all that. Everything's gravy for everybody. She never uses the house anymore. She gets over her weirdness. And then so, it's about 2011. I'm, 21 by now. And then me and my wife, which was the girlfriend at the time, we're getting our stuff together and we need a place to stay. So I'm like, well, the open trailer's there, let me live there. So me and her move in there and everything. And so, we're young, we party a lot, drink, friends over all the time, smoking, whatever. We're having a good life. And then, so I'm in the kitchen, and then my wife is in the bathroom or the bedroom, wherever. And then I'm just playing on my laptop, and I'm, downloading songs and doing whatever. And I turn around to go bother her or go talk to her about something. And when I turn around, there's a man in a black suit standing right in front of me. And I audibly go out loud and say, "Oh, f***." But by the time I'm even finished saying that, he's gone. He's not scary or nothing like that. It was like a normal guy you'd see as a side character in Mad Men or something. Just a slightly balding, comb over, pencil thin lips, just, a normal looking guy, probably 50. And he's just in a black suit. And that's what I could make out of him. You have a half second to see him. So I assume I was just, I don't know, still stoned. Who knows? And then laugh it off. Me and my wife laugh about it at the time. So a few days later, I'm playing dominoes with my friend Justin, who lives across the field. So behind the trailer, there's a big grass field, a couple acres, and then his house is on the other side. He comes over every once in a while, and we hang out and stuff. And then, so this night we're playing dominoes, and I'm making a joke, half laughing, half serious, that, "Hey man, I think I seen a ghost the other day." And then he goes, "Oh man, for real? I see ghosts all the time in our house. Me and my dad have constantly seen a man in a black suit walking through the grass in the backyard." Which instantly, I never brought it up. I didn't say what I seen, and he already threw out the man in the black suit. So this is too weird now. So we compare our stories, and everything is exactly the same. And then so now it's definitely something's weird. But I'm still skeptic at heart. There's nothing scary about it. It's just high strangeness. A couple months go by, partying again, friends over. We're all drinking, having a good time. Now everybody starts to leave. It gets late. Me and my wife sit on the couch, and then our last friend Johnny is the one to leave. He waited a little longer to sober up, and everything's good. And then about a half hour after, it's just me and her watching TV for, a half hour, 35 minutes. He comes back in. But this time, when he comes in, he's not the happy person that we seen leave. He's white. He's sick looking. Oh no, something's wrong. You would have thought he was just out there puking the whole time. And but he didn't drink that much. So we're like, "What's going on, man?" And then he tells us that he got in his truck to leave, and there was a man in a black suit sitting next to him, and then he just started talking to him. And we're like, "What? This is too crazy." Not even the man in the black suit, but you just sat there and talked to him, But he said by the time that he sobered up and realized what was happening and thought about it, the man disappeared on him. And so we're like, okay, this is just outrageous. So everybody around, we're all telling each other stories and stuff. I tell them our stories. And so it's just this is crazy now, And so that's pretty much the end of that. But it's not even the exact end. I don't know. Because we moved out. Me and my wife got married. We got better jobs, we moved on, got a better house. My mom, finally sold that house because it was pointless to keep anymore. And then so, in about 2018, the house caught on fire and killed 2 children in it. And now, in the back of my head, I always assumed, is this an omen? Is this what death is? Is he always just lurking around the corner and he wants you to know? And then when those 2 children died, it shook my whole family, including my wife and our friends. We all got a hold of each other. I told my mom's telling me, my sister's calling, freaking out about it, because that was the house we grew up in, and all the weirdness happened, and the man in the black suit that was always around, And so now, I don't know what to think of it. Maybe someone else has a better idea or could put it together, or maybe this has happened to other people, and the man in the black suit's just been creeping around a bunch of people. So, that's my story. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. What a wild series of events. Rapping and pounding on the walls, unexplained power outages, opening doors and cabinets, and that TV that powered on by itself. And that's not to mention the ghost of a little boy, or witnessing the man in the black suit. More than once, even. But to then have the fire occur Now, I'm but a mere paranormal podcast host, so what do I know? But it certainly sounds like there was something strange taking place out at that trailer. How or why? Those are very good questions. Perhaps there was a structure of some sort on that land years before the trailer was moved there. And maybe the ghosts are holdovers from the days when that land was used. Or perhaps the trailer itself has some sort of connection. Perhaps the builders used reclaimed wood or steel or something like that. Or perhaps an overlooked possibility. Perhaps one of the residents there has an attachment of their own. Probably Kyle himself, since he seems to be the only central character in these stories. And I bet if we tried hard enough, we could conjure up a half-dozen other likely sources to this supernatural activity. But you know, this is just a slice. I have dozens, if not hundreds, of stories just like this. Tales of haunted houses peppered across the country. Unassuming homes like the one right next door to yours. Occupied by not only a family, but something we still can't seem to identify as well. And folks, that's going to do it for this Tuesday episode. A huge thanks to everyone that tuned in, and to you for taking the time to listen tonight. Now, Monsters Among Us is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes and Delaney Bowers. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Now be sure to follow us on our social media accounts over at Facebook and Instagram. While you're at it, join us at YouTube. We sure could use the support over there. And finally, don't forget to leave us a rate and review wherever that sort of thing is possible. A little gesture like that goes a long, long way to help the show grow. And finally, tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Co.AG Music, and Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Now, I hope I meet up with you on Thursday for this week's main episode. Per usual, I have all sorts of spooky stories to share with you over there. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in. Keep it spooky. And of course, have yourselves a good night.